Welcome everyone. Today is our EBC Professional Series webinar from Executive to Executive Coach, starting an Encore career as a professional executive. I'm Terry Hildebrandt. I'm the Director of the Evidence-Based Coaching Program at the Fielding Graduate University. And today we have three panelists that have joined us. We have Jude Olson and Hank Provost and Bev Paulin. Welcome all of you. They will be talking about their journeys and answering some questions that we've prepared, as well as questions from the audience. So just to kick us off, if each of you could begin with a brief introduction to talk about what has been your personal journey or experience in moving from executive or internal leader to executive coach. And if each of you could spend about 3 to 4 minutes providing that introduction, that'll be helpful. And let's start with Hank.
Good morning. I'm Hank Provost, and I'm actually around the corner here, literally from Terry in Denver, and just down the street from Richard up in Boulder. I've been here 14 years. Have been blessed with 45 years of increasingly more complex and developmental business experience, having worked in increasingly more senior level executive roles in organizations around the world, primarily for-profit organizations, but certainly very large companies, startup companies in the Middle East, companies that have been going through transitions and turnarounds, and a significant startup company here in Denver in the food and beverage business about 15 years ago. And I say that because when I think about my evolution from executive to executive coach, my journey has been one of understanding that when I'm working with business leaders, and especially more senior business leaders, that they start with the outcome in mind first, then we come back and talk about what are the developmental needs that they have or that their leaders have in order to achieve the business outcomes they want. I say that because the reality is that no matter what we think our methodology for coaching may be or what's important, when I step into the office of a C-level officer especially, but also middle-level leaders, what they are thinking about is, what do I need to get done for my business this year or in the short term in order to make it successful? And inevitably, they're going to begin to tell me about the various issues they have with capturing new market share, solving some issue they're having with accelerating the efficiency of their supply chain, improving the technology that they have to drive their business. And it's important because I think that for me, to make the attachment or the connection with that leader, I need to at least start from where they are at. And if I get too caught up in my coaching methodology or what coaching is about, I'm likely to lose them. So I have found, at least for myself, and I guess the way to put it is, I think for me with working with senior leaders, it's content before process. And I learned that over 45 years by by kind of having that beaten into me by senior leaders, because I was typically sitting in HR roles or senior organizational development roles. And most of the time, what the leaders were asking from me was, help me to figure out how to make my workforce more productive, how to solve for the business issues I have to solve for this year to deliver our profitability. Now, that may sound a bit cold and heartless, but it's kind of the reality of when you're working with executives and leaders in business, is that's what they walk in the door with every day worrying about. So I know that, at least for myself and my success, at least thus far in the 5 years that I've been in my own personal practice, is that when I'm able to make that connection with senior leaders, whether they're the founders, the CEO, the CFO, that more often they feel a better connection to me more quickly when I walk in the room. And literally the first question I'll ask is, other than how are you doing, is I'll ask them, tell me what's going on with your business and what is it you need to solve for. And we'll go through a series of questions around, what have you done thus far? What would it look like in 12 months if you and your business were being successful? What are some of the most significant gaps? So there's really more of a business analysis discussion that I take them through initially. because I want them to be isolating and narrowing in more quickly on what's the business issue, and I want to learn that. Then we can come back and talk about what are the coaching issues for themselves and maybe their leaders that we need to solve for in order to enable them to solve their business issues. So.
Great, thank you, Hank. So let's hear from Bev. Bev, what's been your journey and transition?
Thanks, Terry. So my name is Bev Paulin. I'm originally from Australia and I'm dialing in from Singapore today. So lovely to be with you. So my sort of coaching career really began back in the late 90s. And I was introduced to coaching through an organisation that I worked with. So I worked with a coach. And in working with the coach, I got really interested in coaching. I came out of a sort of practitioner sort of perspective. I did a lot of work in OD, organisational capability, learning and development. So in working with this coach, I sort of had this sort of light bulb moment about the possibility of a role like that. And it was something that I'd not really come across. So that sort of set me on a journey. I come out of a psychology background originally. I was doing a master's degree, so I focused that on counselling psychology, with this sort of view of this area developing, which was really the intersection of work and people. And that sort of felt like the place for me to sort of be, really. So that I then sort of progressed through. I actually began to work with some coaching companies. And it's been really a progressive journey that took me from Australia into Asia. I've been in Asia for about 14 years. And I began coaching in the career management field, and then over the last 10 years have really specialised that much more into working with leaders and around leadership development. So I've had the sort of opportunity to work with leaders from all over the world and across Asia. And so I guess the other part of my journey beyond sort of the practice of coaching has been into holding roles in global coaching and consulting companies that have been around holding responsibility for the quality of coaching, the associate coach communities that have been attached to those organisations and their supervision and learning and ongoing sort of development. So the other significant sort of step for me was in 2009 when I began fielding evidence-based coaching program. Because up until that time, I'd not done any specialist training in coaching other than in-house proprietary models that I was trained in. So in 2009, I began the program, and to be honest, I actually wasn't sure if I was going to continue with coaching. I wasn't quite sure if I'd actually was done with coaching, that maybe I'd done enough. But I wanted to do the program. So I did the program, and it just reinvigorated my whole feel for coaching. I've said this, this is not the first time I'm sharing this story, so I'm not just saying it to you because we're on this webinar. It's a story I've told many times. It really reinvigorated me in the whole coaching sort of space. It's really from then on just been an increasing journey into leadership development coaching and building my own practice in terms of my own professional development and honing my skills. And my most recent sort of iteration has been into coaching a formal qualification in coaching supervision, which I'm just completing now.
Excellent. Yeah, finished coaching supervision training myself about a year and a half ago with Damien Goldvarg, and found it to be incredibly powerful. So that'll be a whole nother webinar we'll have in the near future around supervision. But thank you, Bev. So Jude, if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about your journey.
Sure. Well, first, good morning, y'all. I'm originally from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and have now landed for about 30 years outside of Fort Worth, Texas. So I'm calling in from Texas, all y'all. And I am like Bev in that I started early in my career getting a master's in counseling. So I always have enjoyed working on the individual level, but also on the OD level. So later in life, midlife crisis, I decided to go back to fielding and get my PhD in human systems and human development org systems. I'm not sure that's what it's called anymore, but and so like Hank, I just want to say that I always start with the business needs as well, and to appreciate the organizational context that leaders operate in. And most leaders come in with a task or with a challenge or with a vision to implement or a reorg or something, as well as their own individual attributes to develop. So I went to, so really the first part of my career was OD oriented, and I was in corporate America at different organizations, and my first real leadership position, I would say, was executive director, actually, of a nonprofit. Then I went into corporate America. Then I was a VP at a consulting company, international consulting company, and I got to do the startup office in Fort Worth. And then I was recruited by Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company in Fort Worth to be their senior manager of OD, which they never had before. So that was a 20-year run where I got to work with the senior leaders of the F-35 built team during their first decade of developing that fantastic airplane. And that led me into coaching because Lockheed Martin wanted to develop leaders from their director ranks. So they had an accelerated leadership program. They also brought in a lot of vice presidents from the military and customer ranks to be leaders in our company. And so I got to be the coach for the vice presidents. I got to help develop coaches with the HR ranks to help the leadership development programs. And most importantly, I got to be the head coach of that site. So I got to source and hire coaches. And I have to say that was one of the best experiences for me to launch my own coaching business later. It also exposed me to requirements for coaches. So that's where I was introduced to International Coaching Federation and credentialing, because we had been internally certified by Lockheed, who had brought in some talent. And then just this past year, after a few years, I retired about 3 years ago from Lockheed and have been doing my own business since. I just received my PCC, so I know somebody on the call just got their PCC, so congrats. I would say that my journey, my building of my business, it was something I loved to do. So I thought, well, in my Encore years here, why not do coaching? And I've really relied on my professional network that I developed over 30 plus years for referrals. I do have a couple of contracts with consulting project or coaching projects that are interesting. So I do virtual coaching as well as executive coaching. And my 3 areas of focus are transition, accelerated transition for leaders in position or new to company. I do leadership development, the traditional assessment work with development plans. And I also have a specialty now in EQ for technical leaders. Another Encore career I have is being a professor at a local university, University of Dallas. And I happen to teach emotional intelligence for leaders there. So that kind of complements my coaching career. There you go.
Great.
That's who I am. People accuse me of having not really retired. So that's possibly, I resemble that remark. However, I do enjoy what I do now in a more flexible way, and combine that with retirement pursuits of travel. And I'm a new grandmother, so I'm in Colorado, by the way. I have a new grandson in Castle Rock. Thank you. And I'm enjoying seeing more of Colorado.
Great. Thank you, Jude. Well, thank you all for the introductions and talking about your personal journey. Our next question is, many of the people on the call, no doubt, are perhaps thinking about starting their own careers as executive coaches. So what recommendations do you have for an experienced leader or executive who wants to start an Encore career in coaching? And let's start with Bev this time.
Okay, so I guess my own experience has been a little bit the other way around, in that I came into coaching as a practitioner and then grew into leadership roles within coaching and consulting companies, rather than sort of making that transition. But I have, like Jude, I have over many years in building associate coach communities with companies I've worked with, hired and recruited and developed coaches. What I would sort of suggest to you is to really think about, what is it, if you're considering a career in coaching, what is it that's sort of driving you around that? What's the purpose that you bring into that? To think about your own transformational experiences, the experiences you've had with change and development, and how that might have impacted you, and how that might then support you as a coach. To really consider the training and development that you get, the program that you might want to engage with to build your coaching credential, to really consider a program that also brings you, a credential with one or more of the associations, worldwide associations like the ICF or others, so that you can actually be credentialed as well. And to think about I think for a lot of people coming into coaching from the sort of corporate and business world, it is to really think about the intersection that you're going to be in. So this intersection between your business experience and the capacity to build a coaching capability, the capacity to work with people, either in a one-on-one or other ways through coaching. If you might want to go on and look at groups or teams or that kind of thing. But that's the key piece, it is the intersection. So it's a combination of something that's more than just the corporate experience. That provides a really helpful base, but there's how do I then sort of grow that into this capacity to work with people. So I think I'll pause there, Terry. Henry and Jude may have some some sort of experience from coming the other way around that might be useful to share.
Absolutely. Just one short follow-up question. You mentioned the importance of getting a credential and we'll talk more about this later, but since you've been heavily involved in buying coaching services and really sourcing executive coaches, how important do you think a credential is?
Critical. So in that, coaching has been an evolving space for, the last sort of, I guess, 25, 30 years or so. But, where it is now, there's been this increasing sort of move towards really being trained, so coach-specific training and qualifications that clients look for, and looking at some sort of credential. That's critical. And so for both, I think, organisational clients and also organisations that engage coaches as associates, because it provides, if you think about it, it provides you some sort of assurance about the type of training and experience, and also the ethical codes and codes of conduct that coaches are bringing.
Yes.
So in my view, it's critical.
Great. Well, thank you.
Great point.
So, Hank, I'd like to hear any recommendations you have for someone who's thinking about starting an Encore career in coaching.
Well, I'll tell you, this discussion thus far has just prompted a lot of thoughts for me, even in addition to what I came to the table with. But I think there's 2 or 3 things I briefly want to speak to there around the idea of narrowing your focus, measuring your energy, and what's the third one? Anyways, let me start with the first 2. So there is you're right, an enthusiasm to go out and to want to be all things to everybody. And as you know, there are many different kinds of clients out there. And I am finding that my skill set and my energy and where I'm really good is working with more senior level leaders who have business issues to solve, because I do have a lot of content knowledge and experience. So I find that I'm drawn to that kind of work. And if I could have, over the last 5 years of my practice, done anything differently, I would have spent even more time trying to do work with C-level officers, and maybe some of the work I was doing with other leaders in the organization who maybe didn't quite resonate with me or give me the energy I might not have taken on. So that's one thing, is be clear on who is the client base that you're probably going to resonate with best and you're going to enjoy, and where you're really, really, really going to be good, and therefore you're probably going to get more business in that space. The other one issue is around measuring your energy, and a number of us are talking about Encore careers. I'm 67 now, and I think, as with Bev, I should have retired maybe 5 years ago, but I haven't, because I love what I do, and I'm balancing.
Actually, I think that was Jude.
Oh, Jude, yeah, exactly. So I thought I was the only one that had that conflict, but I love the work so much. And I'll tell you how much I love it. I have a medical boot on my foot from a cracked ankle, and I managed to navigate myself through O'Hare Airport the other night to go see a client. I was so passionate about getting there. So, but I think that as we are in later stages of life, it's different. I don't have to worry in my 60s about paying my mortgage as if I were in my 20s. So I can be more selective, but I also think that I need to be very measured on the energy and the time that I want to put into my practice. And so therefore be even much more clear with what clients I'm willing to take on. And I do have the great fortune of continuing to have clients looking for me to do business, but I have to be very clear with myself on how much time and energy I want to put into it. The only other item I would put out there is that for a number of years, I thought about, I could affiliate with a consulting firm, and then we could work together to find clients and develop business. Actually, that took me about 4 years to find a firm that either wanted to work with me or I wanted to work with them. And as it turned out, the client or the firm I found quite accidentally, but that has turned out for me very well. And they've thrown me a lot of nice business with some good clients. So, that's another way of developing business, but be very, very introspective about what firms you would want to go work with, because they're not all the same. There's a lot of different business models out there, and personalities and motivations for why clients or firms want to work with us. So I would say, but it is a way to bring business in without having to do a lot of business development on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think I just want to build on that a little bit. As you know, I've been in private practice too for over 10 years, and I've done a mix of partnering with firms that offer coaching and then doing my own thing and building my own client base. What do you see as the pros and cons, just in kind of summary that you've experienced and partnering versus building your own business.
You're talking about me, Hank?
Yes, Hank, sorry.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is the pro is I don't have to do the business development for the most part because they have the marketing side and the sales side where they go find the clients, they've been able to find some pretty significant clients. And so I don't have to spend the time and resource to go sell the business. They bring me in once they sell the business and put me in front of the client, and then we determine whether that works. The downside is I don't get the fee that I would get if I was out owning the business. So for my private clients that I have, I'm able to charge a whole lot more than what I'm getting for the clients I get through the firm. So it's a difference in terms of reward for the amount of time you're putting in. So I think for myself, I think, Terry, that's probably the big one. It's that risk and reward for what, the fact that you can get clients without having to do a lot of business development per se, although I'm helping them to keep the client through my good work. But it's a lot lower investment on that side. But then sometimes I think, well, am I really getting paid for what I'm worth? But if you can come to terms with that, that probably is the big thing that I have found is the issue with working with a firm.
Great, thank you. So Jude, I'd love to hear your perspective. What recommendations do you have?
Well, I would say definitely always invest in education. So many people, when I first started out, said, well, you have a PhD to put on your business card. What else do you need? And that actually did work. And it still strengthens my competitive edge with others. So anyone considering a PhD or EDD, I say, keep going. And then when I was introduced to the credentialing, and as I said, even Lockheed Martin in the beginning of their coaching request did not require credentialing. By the time I left that company, that was the only kind of coach they wanted. So that's a marketing advantage.
When you were saying the only kind of coach, a credentialed coach, or?
A credentialed coach by the ICF. So that led me down to investigate that path and, of course, find a training program that is approved by the ICF. There are many training programs for coaching, but I counsel folks do not participate in one that is not approved, because then you walk out the door with your ACC credential in most cases. And that was a great investment. They might cost, I don't know what they're up to now, but I think I paid $10,000 to $12,000 for my first credential. And my husband was very leery about that. He said, oh my gosh, you have a PhD, why are we doing this? I said, well, I think it's going to be a market requirement. And do you know that 2 months after I got it, I got my first coaching gig for $15,000. So boom, good feedback from the universe. I was on the right path. And to that point, I would say, go find your local chapter of International Coaching Federation. There's one in every city. I know Denver has a big one, I believe.
They do.
Dallas has one of the first chapters ever in the history of the organization, and you are welcome to attend those meetings as a member if you're enrolled in a coach training program. So you can be a beginner, and I found a community. I found referrals. I got involved on committees, and I even wound up being president of the chapter. I'm now in my last year, thank goodness, as stepping off after 3 years, but that also gave me visibility, gave me credibility, and referrals. So I would say for your own personal professional growth and also for visibility, get involved with your local chapter, and that has helped. I want to also build on Hank's comments that when I first started out, every coaching opportunity looked wonderful because you're starting out. And it took me a few years of testing the waters, seeing what works, what doesn't work. Also, I decided to wait before I did my own website because I wanted really to see, well, what am I getting hired for? And that helped me actually develop my niches, because at first I thought I wouldn't do corporate coaching, and then that's what I was being hired for, because that's my experience, that's my expertise, and I do well with those leaders. So I've now claimed that as my business niche. And then within that, as I said, transition, leadership development, and I was getting a lot of technical leaders, which of course Lockheed was scientists and engineers, so I built that background. So I would say wait a few years before you invest more money into your professional website, because the market will tell you what they value. I also am getting women leaders. So some of these women VPs or doctors want a woman. And so that's an advantage. And I'll take it. I'll take it if that's what they want. So I think that those would be my recommendations. Also, one last thing, that people in certain companies want certain assessments. So that's why I have also invested in my own certification in MBTI Step 2. And also the Hogan Leadership Suite is huge. I love that tool. You definitely have to go get certified in that, invest more money, but it's worth it if that's what the company is needing. So.
All right, thank you, Jude. And I just want to also confirm, there's some great associations that exist, and the ICF is certainly powerful and global, but also in Europe there's EMCC, which is a European Mentoring and Coaching Council, since we are a global community. And for executive coaching, there's the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, or known as the ACEC. Another great organization that I'm actively involved in addition to the ICF. So many great opportunities to connect with other leaders, other coaches, and specifically when we're talking about executive coaching today, ACECs might be another opportunity for people to explore. And then in Europe, there's also Apex, which is quite popular in the UK. So those are just a few other opportunities. Yeah.
Terry, I also wanted to mention, because we are an academic community, that the Academy of Management also is another organization that actually has divisions in management consulting and leadership. They don't quite have the coaching circle yet, but I'm going to help start that one, I think. And there are faculty members, of course, who are coaches, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a hidden circle, just like you, Terry, in terms of being at a university and being a coach.
Yep. And one other organization that Fielding's a member is called GSACS, and GSACS is a graduate school. So it's for coaching organizations that are specifically dedicated toward graduate level coach education, like Fielding is. And we're one of the founding members of GSACS as well. So,
nice.
So next question is, what support have you found to be the most helpful in this transition from executive to executive coach? I know we've already talked about associations, but what other support have you guys found helpful? And let's start with Jude on that one.
I think, again, I've already really answered this with the ICF community. For me was an eye-opener. I had no idea really what the coaching industry or profession looked like from a broader level, and getting involved, even as an officer of that chapter, I got sent to a global conference in Poland, and could not believe how Europe is exploding with the coaching profession, and different standards, psychological standards, requirements. So that was very encouraging and eye-opening. So I would say broaden your vision. And then, of course, you always have your own little mentor circle of experienced coaches that you can rely on, brainstorm ideas about pricing, about proposal writing, about how would you handle this ethical decision. I'm glad that Bev actually brought up ethics, because when you do corporate coaching, you know this. You get involved with how does the corporation going to treat the executive, and what do they want to know about the executive in your coaching engagement. So you really have to know your boundaries and the ethical standards and stand up for those when you're in a politically sensitive situation. So there you go.
Excellent point. Bev, I'd love to hear your perspective. What support has helped you the most?
I think certainly the sort of growing kind of expansion into coaching associations. So I belong to a number of associations, EMCC and ICF, and I think that's been helpful because I am particularly drawn to sort of wanting to sort of keep on the edge of what's happening within coaching, what's the trend, where are the trends, the future of coaching. I'm doing a PhD at Fielding as well, which is in coaching. So, you know, it also helps, the associations also help me keep track of key issues, and they provide journals, so we can get that through the Fielding Library. But it just sort of, they just sort of bring a lot of things into focus. You know, to be honest, I haven't always had the time I would like to go to a lot of events that I would have liked to go to. I do now sort of try and pick up attending to global webinars and things of that nature. The other thing that I've found helpful is sort of finding the sort of, I guess in a sense, of the sort of coach groups that you may feel a sense of resonance with. So I certainly have spent a lot of time in the adult development space over the last 10 years. So I've done a lot of work learning about bringing those sort of perspectives into coaching, and then being engaged with a lot of coaches who have a sort of a similar sort of interests. So, you know, so whatever that is, I mean, there's many different ways of thinking about coaching, and the you know what really sort of draws your interest. But I've found that helpful. I think I've done a lot of assessment certifications over the years before I came into coaching, and then sort of since, which has been helpful. I think those. I mean, I already mentioned Fielding. Yeah, I think they're probably the key pieces that have been most helpful as I've sort of kind of just deepened and broadened. But I certainly don't have any regrets about, like, if I had not have made the decision to do the coach specific training, I think at some point that sort of progression would have certainly eased, if not stopped, because the world of coaching has changed so much over those years. You know, the expectations on coaches, and for the standards by which organisations look for coaches. But I think they're probably key things for me, Terry.
Great, thank you. Hank, what are your thoughts? What's supported you the most?
Quickly, 3 things, and I'm going to start with, and I know there's somebody on the line who is still evaluating the EBC program at Fielding. I took my graduate work at Fielding in the later years of my corporate career, and then immediately went on to the year-long EBC program with Lenny and Francine. And I will tell you that I think today I would have been an okay coach, but because of that work collectively, I'm really a great coach, because, you know, as Lenny would always point out, this is about creating frameworks that people see the world through. And the more as you as a coach can understand those frameworks through the evidence, you will be able to partner with that client in a successful way. So I would say EBC, 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 and nothing but. Without it, Without it, we're only good coaches. So that's number one. Number two, and I think we all have these people. I had two people in my life and still do who either had coaching firms in the past or still do, who are my constant coach and counsel around not only how to coach, but also how to run my business and how to evaluate potential clients, and how to even to this day approach different issues I'm having with clients. So if you do have those little boards of directors in your life of people that you can turn to, that's important. And I'm going to say this not in a funny way, but in an important, a precious way. My therapist, who for a number of years has been my thought partner, thinking through why I'm doing coaching, why at this point in life, how it's adding to my passion and love of life. And so, you know, even having that is helpful and important to me. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is going to add something. You prompted me. I think one of the things I found really helpful about doing EBC, because I'd been coaching for quite a while before I came into that program, but I'd been using sort of in-house proprietary models, was that the EBC really put me in a position of being able to, through the work we did, to examine the models and frameworks from a range of sources and as you said, Hank, really look at the evidence and get into the literature around coaching. And that was really fun. It was really what I wanted. I wanted to sort of be able to be immersed in that and sort of get beyond sort of the models that that I knew and had been trained on. So that was really helpful. And it's a little bit of I better be careful I don't get on my soapbox. I don't know, is that an American soapbox? Is that translated?
It does. We use that metaphor as well.
Because I think personally, you know, I just think the capacity of coaches to be able to fit what they're doing within some sort of model and frame, whatever that is that you create for yourself through training and your own sort of work and reflection. It's really important to do that, to be able to kind of know where things have come from and, you know, your point of view. And I think the EBC course really encouraged that as well. So I found that that was really critical, you know, that piece. And the picking up on the therapy piece, I think also being coached and also working with a supervisor. So without a doubt, I think the work I've done over the last sort of 12 months plus with the supervision program and also working very closely with a supervisor has been really powerful. But that capacity to be coached and sort of examine what you yourself and what you are then are bringing into that relationship, I've found that very supportive in my own development as a coach.
Great, thanks, Bev. So this question's more about purchasing coaching, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to go a bit deeper. And the question is, what do buyers of executive coaching look for when choosing a coach? And who would like to start?
I can start.
Great, thanks, Jim.
I think what's been helpful for me is, and this builds on Bev's point, is to have a plan. When a lot of people want to buy coaching, they're not sure what that looks like. They know they have an executive in trouble, or they have someone ready for the C-suite, but they just need a little more polish. There's something driving that. And so I have a very simple plan. I say, well, here's a typical 3 to 6 month engagement. That's kind of what I sell, 3 to 6 months. There's always room for adding on months per, you know, another price, but I just have a simple map of where I would start. That's, you know, usually assessments, also 360 feedback in some way. And then that feeds into an action planning process. And that feeds into implementing the action plan. Then there's some measurement of success and plans for the future. So it's very simple. It's very generic. It's a one-page map, but it helps ground buyers. It gives you a starting place to say, okay, is this what I'm buying, so to speak? And then I always say, well, it's customized, you know, what we can negotiate, really the assessments and the timing, et cetera. So I think having something to put in front of a buyer is a good start. And it also, you know, you also accentuate the fact that you're working within an ICF credentialed process and ethical standards. So I map out what their role is in the coaching engagement, what my role is in the coaching engagement, what information they would get from me in terms of reports, what's confidential, etc. So anyway, start with a plan and then have some ballpark pricing in mind. Do your research about what the market can bear, and don't be shy. Put it out there. They'll always try to negotiate you down, so start high.
So this is probably another question that we'll follow up with, but you know, I know everyone has their own pricing structure, but what is a typical 3 to 6 month engagement typically run?
Well, in my world, it would be 15,000. And if I march into the executive top suite, then that could be 25,000. So there's a range.
Absolutely. Okay.
You get paid more for, as Hank knows, for the top folks, because it is more politically charged usually, and a lot more at risk for the company and for the executive if things don't turn around or something, or they leave. I'm coaching someone right now where the company knows that person has a choice to leave. So our coaching is developmental, but it's also decision making, and we'll see how it turns out.
Great, thank you. So Hank, why don't you give us your perspective?
Yeah, well, Jude, thanks. You're letting me know I'm leaving money on the table. So
And by the way, I don't get that all the time, okay? I'm not every engage. I just say start there.
But I'm going to build on Jude. I think there's 2 reasons clients come to me for. Rarely is it because they have this wonderful development program they're bringing coaches into. It's usually one of 2 things. It's help us stop the pain, or help us increase the runway for this yes. employee. In fact, I've had one of both each this week. A young woman who's a marketing manager, who's very smart, but she yells at her people and nobody wants to work for her. And the client is saying, help us stop the pain, help us get her attention. I've also had this week a client with a middle-level leader who's got great capacity from a technical standpoint. They just want him to be able to expand his capacity to build the business forward. So it's, you know, 90% of the time, it's one of the other. And usually when I'm talking with clients, I want to dig down a little deeper to be really, really, really clear as to which it is, and is it a coaching issue? By the way, I think about at least 20% of clients that come to us for coaching are not really coaching clients because they just don't have the self-awareness to be able to accept that they have some work to do, nor do they have the motivation. And so I think it's really important. I'm not saying that I turn clients away because of that, but it's really important to go in with your eyes open that there are sometimes situations where you can work for 6 months and just not move the dial, which has nothing to do with your lack of skill or expertise. But, you know, there are clients out there who people on the call here who have more psychological backgrounds than me would understand these people need to be with a therapist, not with a coach. And I think it's really important to be aware of that and keep your eyes open as you go forward and know the difference between the 2. But anyway, so that's why clients come to us typically to stop the pain or help us increase the level. Yeah.
Okay, and just one point of clarification that showed up in the chat room for Jude. Was that dollar amount for 3 month or 6 month, or maybe both?
Oh, it could be, okay, I would say it could be sometimes for both, but I start out with the 3 month and see if they'll go for that. And then I usually charge $1,000 a month for additional months, because the way I do coaching is it's really front loaded. Like a lot of my work is done in, probably like others, you're doing that in those 3 months. So you need the top dollar for the first 3 months. Then if they want to go to 6 months, I add on another 1,000 per month, because then you're implementing, right? You're supporting, but you're not doing the heavy assessment and 360. Often my feedback 360, people want an interview process.
Right.
So I'm really investing a lot of time doing 12 or 15 interviews on the phone, then writing up that analysis and doing a report. So there is a lot of work. I'm not saying it's not a lot of work, but it's usually front loaded, and that's how I do the pricing.
Yeah,
So.
and there was one other question, which was how many clients are self-pay versus company sponsored?
Well, in my business, it's corporate. It's company sponsored. So.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think in the last 5 years I've had maybe 2 clients who were self-pay. Everybody is corporate, so they're getting paid by their company.
Okay, great. And Bev, any thoughts? I know you've been a purchaser on the purchasing side. Yeah.
And so actually I've in OD roles I've employed coaches, and then in my consulting roles been a coach and also brought in coaches. And also had responsibility for, business development around coaching. So a lot of the work in that context I've done has been working where organisations either regionally or globally are running some kind of cultural change, and there is a space for coaching in that. So that a lot of my experience has been in that area. It's for me, in terms of Encore, I'm actually now I'm returning to Australia very soon, and I'm actually commencing my own practice. So I'm kind of also listening to the conversation with that ear as well. So it's a little bit different. But the only thing I would add beyond what I've said before is this sense of, getting a sense of who you are as a coach. And so that when you go to meet with prospective clients, they have a sense of who you are, beyond the basics of the, credentials and so on. They want to get a sense of you. Right. And what you bring into your coaching. So to be able to really think through and answer those sorts of questions, what might be distinguishing you, what kind of coach are you, what's the framework, what's the model, as Jude was talking about, and Hank, the plan, the approach that you would have, being able to answer those sorts of questions. And there's no one right answer. It's the answer that feels right for you in your practice. So I think those sorts of things are really important.
And I want to build on Bev's comment too, is in corporate coaching, you often they're shopping for coaches. So you are often presented as one of 3 options perhaps to a client. Right. And then you have an opportunity to, I usually do it virtually if possible, but sometimes they want you to meet the person for 20, 30 minutes and to explain exactly what Bev was saying. Who are you? What's your approach? What are your values? And that chemistry is part of the buying equation, right? The clients will get back to the corporation and say, well, I want her, I want him, because of a match. So there is an intangible chemistry that goes into buying as well. And I think I only had one time where I refused the client. I said, based on my session, this is not going to work for me. So it's helpful for us too to get a glimpse of the client ahead of time. So,
absolutely, anyway. The chemistry meetings, they often call them, goes both ways, right?
Yes,
can I work? Is this person a good candidate for coaching, like Hank mentioned earlier? Absolutely. Yeah. So just to wrap up today, I'm going to just ask each of you to close maybe with 30 seconds of any last advice you might have for our listeners today.
Well, I just want to say that I think this is a great career for your Encore third chapter in your life or any other time in your life, really, because I enjoy it. I mean, to Hank's point about energy, I usually come away from coaching energized, and that's a good sign for me that I'm doing something I enjoy. And even though it might be a tough situation, that it is using my talents, my skills, keeps me interested in and I love the variety of clients. I mean, I've had clients at Louis Vuitton, I've had clients in the medical world, in the defense industry. I mean, to me, every client is a new story, and it's fun to explore and discover what is there. So I just want to put a plug in that this can be an enjoyable career. It can also be lucrative, but it has to be enjoyable to make it work.
Great, thank you, Jude.
You know, I've learned so much today, and thanks, Terry, for putting this together. This has been exceeded my expectations for what I thought I would learn from this. You know, again, it's all about where we're each at in our stage of growth and development. I'm in my Encore years for sure. I truly love the work I'm doing, and 80% of the time I'm just overjoyed with the opportunity to be able to work with these clients, and at moments I wonder where I'm going to find the energy to get through the next hour. But for the most part, I think I'm where I want to be. I'm enjoying the work I'm doing. I'm so glad I'm associated with this network, because it's been a little while since I've really joined a community of coaches, and I thought, ew, Terry's out there kind of telling me I need to come be part of this, and I'm glad I did. So we never stop developing and growing as coaches and human beings, no matter where we're at in our careers. So
Great, excellent.
So I would say, you know, really, I guess I'm echoing Jude in a way. I really love this sort of work, but I've done it in one form or another for many years, you know, 30 years. And that sort of morphed into coaching. But I think you really need to love doing that kind of work, that your purpose really needs to come from within that space somewhere. Because it takes a lot, the way in which you bring yourself to those coaching relationships. Every part of your purpose is reflected in that. So I would encourage that. And the second thing I would say is look for, and I think this is something that's also been a great support for me, is like finding communities that you can be a part of in this world. And there are many different sort of types of communities, but staying connected in a community. And I've just been absolutely loving the fielding community of practice that we've been getting off the ground with Terry. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank all of our panelists today, Bev, Hank, and Jude, for joining us, sharing your wisdom and your experiences, as well as being able to learn together. And that's really what our coaching community practice is about. And we invite, if you aren't a member yet and you're listening to this recording later, please reach out and become a member. It is free of charge, so this is an opportunity for you to continue to grow and to experience others in the fielding community and beyond. And for those who aren't aware, we do have our own ICF accredited program, which Bev and Hank talked about extensively, and we also offer PhD programs and EDD programs that Jude and Bev have been involved in. And so we'd be happy to talk to you about how you can contribute to the scholarship of coaching. We also have in our doctoral programs a EBC concentration, which enables you to go deeper and do research and scholarship in coaching. And that's something we've added in recent years, probably since you graduated, Jude, and certainly since I graduated.
Yes. Yes, and could I put out a request too? I'm starting to want to do more research about how coaching can inform leadership development, even in the academic world. So if anyone is researching kind of what does coaching bring to a leadership development experience, please reach out to me. I need some partners.
Absolutely. And I might encourage you to post that on the community of practice because that's another reason why we exist, is to look for those research partnerships that are available with students and with other members. So thank you all again, and we look forward to catching up at our next webinar.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks,
Thank you,
Bev.
Terry. Yeah.
Bye for now.